People, but I do regard myself as being very spiritual. I pray a lot. I have respect for all religions. My very first teacher when I was in first grade was Jewish, and I still, if she were still alive, I would love to get in touch with her. She made a tremendous impression on my life. I loved her dearly. But right now, in fact, last night I went to the cathedral for a Oktoberfest dinner, and this last week I went to the presentation by Sister Simone, who was from Nuns on the Bus. Oh, she was wonderful. I thought, and there were people standing outside protesting with big signs that are saying that she was, I don't know what they call her, but they were nasty signs. And she gave the most beautiful presentation on social justice, and it was, I thought, how can people be opposed to this? If only those protesters would come here and listen to her. She was great.
Now, UWGB at times has been attacked by people as being too liberal and sort of like Nuns on the Bus.
Yeah.
And you being of a Catholic background, when you came here and got associated with UWGB, was there anything that you thought that they were?
No, I thought they were.
Not that you personally, but I mean, did you see people? Was anybody criticizing just like those people outside Nuns on the Bus?
I would not say that there were any active demonstrations, but there were. I would hear some things from the community that they're too liberal out there. Well, I never thought. I'll tell you one thing that they emphasized, and I was delighted when I read the paper this morning that they're starting to emphasize critical thinking in Green Bay schools. That was one thing that I felt very, very important out at UWGB. We were encouraged to think. And sometimes in my other education I had not been encouraged to think. And I thought the critical thinking emphasis at UWGB was marvelous. From almost every instructor that I had, they were.
Were there any classroom debates over some of these issues? I mean, did contraception come up, or abortion, or population planning?
No, but I was asked to give a presentation on life, because I was very involved in end-of-life issues and beginning-of-life issues as well. And I did have a discussion with this one professor. It was people were invited to come. I don't remember where it was, but it was a presentation with his views and my views, and they were very conflicting views. He was very I don't believe in abortion, but I believe very strongly in the woman's right to make the choice. It's the woman's health. I believe strongly in reproductive health issues. And this particular professor was life no matter what, whether or not the woman's health was in danger. And that, I could not buy that.
So what you hear today with debates of Paul Ryan and whatever,
oh yes,
bringing back some...
Oh, it does indeed, it does indeed. And I'm very intolerant of people who are not tolerant. So I don't believe that there should be anyone. When you're talking about health issues, I feel very strongly that individuals need to be in charge of their health. They need information, they need to be informed as to what the issues are when they make choices, but I think there are too many decisions that are made when people don't have the knowledge that they need. For example, I was director of the hospice program for a while at Bellin, and many people thought that hospice was, you were killing people. You know, this was in the early days of hospice. They didn't really understand that there's a time to live and a time to die, and you need to support people when they make those choices. But so often people would say, "Oh, do everything, do everything," and they didn't realize that the implications of doing everything could be very very painful to them. So I think we still need a lot of education on the process of dying and death.
Isn't there cultural acceptance of death? Is that American way? Or did you study these things?
Oh yes. Oh, I've been to so many seminars and have taught so many seminars and have presented throughout the state on issues related to death and dying. It's one of my activist issues.
Yeah. Someone's got to pay attention to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So.
How have you seen the culture of Green Bay change in this period from the, was it late, what year did you come here?
I came here in the 60s. I think it was 62 when we came here. Oh yes, yes.
Stretch.
Yes.
What has changed? How would you explain this to whoever's watching this video in 2040?
Well, I think we have a long ways to go.
Well, where were we back then?
Well, let me tell you, I will give you an example of where we were, having to do with culture. I was working, this is when we first came, before I'd gone back to school, and I was working in one of the local hospitals, which I will not identify. They did not have an emergency room staffed at the time, and the nurse that was on duty at night was to staff the emergency room. You were called down by the licensed practical nurse, and I was called down this one evening and to take care of this gentleman who came into the emergency room who had a laceration on his forehead. I'm going to be very graphic. He had a laceration on his forehead, and he'd had a drink or two, but he was not in any way, shape, or form under the weather. He was very, very polite, very responsive. So being a good nurse at that time, I called the physician that was on call, and I prepared the patient and had him clean the wound and had the Novocaine and the syringe out for him to, at that time, nurses didn't suture. I mean, things have really changed. So he came in and he pushed my hand aside. He did not accept the Novocaine. He took the syringe and pulled the Novocaine out and threw it. And said, and I think I'm quoting his words exactly, "He doesn't need any Novocaine. He's just a GD Indian." Those were his words. I was shocked. So I took the man's hand, and he was very stoic. He never moved when the physician took the stitches.
Was the man aware of what the physician said?
Oh, very much aware. He was a very, very alert, very polite man, and he just gritted his teeth. And I used to tell my students this because I'm so ashamed. I didn't do anything other than hang on to the man's hand. So, in today's society, I would have kicked the physician out of the room and said, "Get out of here. I'll do it myself." But anyhow, the next morning, I went to the director of nurses and I told her what had happened. And she said, "Oh, well, that's all right. That's just Dr. So-and-so." And she dismissed it. There was nothing done at all. And like I used to tell my students, that was the worst time in my nursing career when I reflect that I did not stand up for that patient. But the culture, getting back to culture, the culture in this community was so hostile toward Native Americans. And I had grown up, my father and I used to walk through the cornfields and we would look for arrowheads and Indian things and just, you know, he taught me respect. And I did not see that in Green Bay. The culture was so anti-Native Americans. It was terrible. And I talked to several professors out at UWGB that had experienced the same thing. It was hostile. But then, of course, as the casino came on board and there was money, I shouldn't say it changed. Superficially it changed. But I think there's still a tremendous amount of lack of respect for the Native American culture. Same thing with the Hmongs that came to our community. There was I can remember back in the early 70s, I believe it was, when there were a lot of Hmong fishermen. And the Green Bay community were very resentful because they were going to take away the fish. And this would be written up in the papers. Well, my brother-in-law came back from Vietnam, and he was very upset when he saw what was happening, the hostility toward the Hmong and the Laotian, because he had been a helicopter pilot over there, and he said that were it not for them, he would not be alive. So,
They were known for rescuing.
yes, yes. He had. They had saved his life. He had crashed in I don't know where, but in Vietnam area, or I guess it was back in somewhere in the war zone, and they saved his life. And right now I see the Hispanic community is starting to grow here. Just the other day, this right here in Green Bay, I was talking to this, I was at a dinner party, and President Obama's name came up. And this one supposedly educated woman made some comment about him. Well, he wasn't born in the United States. Now, can this be? This is 2012. This is an educated woman. And fortunately, the other women at the table, oh, don't say that, you know. But she persisted. So it's Green Bay has changed somewhat, but it's still very not accepting of other cultures. Very conservative.
Do you have much contact with religious leaders and clergy in this area, whether Lutheran, Catholic? I think.
Well, in fact, at this dinner last night, the dinner at the cathedral, this lady that I was with, I had told her that I'd gone to see Sister Simone, and she was so outstanding. So she called the priest over and told him that I had been to Sister Simone, and he asked me what my opinion was. So I told him, I said I thought it was an excellent presentation. I said she was very, very bright, very well educated, and presented very well, and she talked about social justice. And he said, I'll have to study this. I'll have to see what she had to say. I thought, why haven't you done it already? But but he was very nice, anxious to hear what she had to say. But no, it's like I say, I'm prejudiced against those that are prejudiced. So
I'm going to pause here.